Thank you for holding this open hearing. Thank you all for being here. Many countries, both friends and adversaries, try to influence and shape American public opinion and ultimately our political process, often through their embassies, which is what they're here for, and many other cases, you know, by getting others to echo points because they want us to fund something or support something. But this, what we're facing now from China, goes far beyond anything the nation's ever confronted, because we've never had a competitor adversary with these resources at their disposal and with the complexity of reach. This is not simply a pure governmental, we're all set up to think about governmental efforts. This is not just governmental. This is a whole of society, whole of economy approach to how they try to influence our policies in the United States. Simply put, you know, I think it's first important to define what it is we're talking about. We are not traditional espionage from China happening at an extraordinary rate, both against our government and against our private sector. And that's not what we're here to talk about today, although we acknowledge it exists at levels that are equally disturbing. What we're talking about here is the effort of the Chinese Communist Party to basically subdue us without fighting, to get us to a point where we are doing the things they want us to do because it's coming from within. And to do that, they've employed tactics and that we've never seen before from an adversary. Because the Russians do this, they're pretty good at it. They did it during the Cold War. But they look like children next to what these guys are able to employ and who they are able to deputize. Let's start with Wall Street, investment firms and corporations, all of whom have been deputized for decades into arguing the Chinese viewpoint of economic policy, of trade, because they're making a lot of money in China. Now, they may realize that one day they'll be put out of business once their Chinese competitor is given all their intellectual property, but for the next few years, there's a lot of money invested, and they understand that in order to have access to that market, they have to make the people that give that access happy. And so they come here to the Capitol for decades, march into the White House, and basically say, we argue what the Chinese Communist Party wanted them to argue on their behalf. It's happening to this very day. We've all heard in media, and what I mean by media is these newsletters, these print, but in many cases, whether it's they're compromising or they're trading access, you know, somebody wants to have access to China and they don't want their visa yanked, and so they got to be careful how they report about China or what issues they focus on out of fear of that regard. In many cases, flat out buying media outlets or even injecting within normal media content paid material that can be tracked back to Communist Party efforts here in the United States. We talk about academia. They knew how to play that really well. First of all, their students that they send here pay full rate and more. In many cases, universities have partnerships. You're dealing with researchers in many cases who are used to this belief in open collaboration, even though with the Chinese, it's usually a one-way street. And then organizations on campus that they help fund, that oftentimes are the first ones out there leading efforts to shut down any efforts to talk about Hong Kong or Tibet or you name it. You think about local governments, because I think they've now figured out, okay, at the federal level, there's like a strong bipartisan consensus. It's not fertile ground anymore. What is fertile ground is city halls and state capitals, where the issue's not talked about every day. And that's just easy picking, you know, in terms of, imagine someone who comes and says, we're going to make a major investment in your state, or likewise, we're going to yank a major investment in your state unless you do what we want you to do on these policy issues. They've learned how to use that against us. Think about the NBA for a second, okay? There was a time a few years ago where you could literally wear and show up with signs that said anything you wanted negative about America, and I mean anything, but you would be expelled from the arena if you had a shirt on that referenced Hong Kong. They would kick you out. They would literally, security guard would come and get you and tell you, you have to leave, especially if you're in camera shot, if it says something negative towards Hong Kong. That happened in the United States of America. Think about Hollywood. You will not find a major motion picture studio in America that will produce a film that has a Chinese government villain or even a Chinese villain. Why? Because the movie won't be distributed over there. And that's a big market for movies. So the list goes on and on. We could be here talking about it all day. It's a big deal, and it's happening right underneath our nose. And there's not enough attention being paid to it. And as the chairman pointed to it, you know, it's difficult because we do, at the end of the day, people have First Amendment rights in this country to speak and to advocate for positions, including those that are against our national interest. And, you know, that's just the way it is. But this is a dedicated effort that at a minimum, the light has to come on so people can see these roaches, so people can see what's happening, what's really happening here right underneath our nose and the impact that that has on our potentially on our society and on our willingness in the future to act. I'll close with this. Everybody worries about Taiwan, and rightfully so. There's a lot of reasons. We're not going to get into all that today as to why we should be worried, but in particular what it can mean, not just to the world order and how people view our country, but to our national security. But envision a time, if there's enough legwork they put into it, this is the narrative they're creating and they're setting up, and they're using it at our schools and our broad society, and that is that when the day comes that there is a Taiwan conflict, the first thing some people are going to ask is, why should Americans die defending some small island halfway around the world, just off the coast of China? I get it, it's bad, we should condemn it, but should we really go fight for that? Is it worth the sacrifice, both treasure and blood, to do it? That's the narrative they're already setting the groundwork for. And they're not doing it among the people sitting up here. They're doing it among the people that one day will be sitting up here, or the people that will one day be working for us, and the people that will be writing about it, the experts that will be commenting on it. So these are the kinds of things that I think that deserve a lot more attention. I'm glad we're having an open hearing on it. Thank you.
Thank you.